Hello and welcome to Abbot House. We trust you'll enjoy your journey with us through the history of the old grey tomb. Our timeline begins in the first floor passage of the house, where displays inform visitors about Fife in the time of the Picts. The Picts were an amalgamation of Iron Age tribes whose lands extended from the Scots Water, now called the River Forth. The sculptured stone carved by Leslie Allen Reid is a half-size replica of the Inverkeithing stone and depicts a hunting party on horseback with a man making the kill. Beneath is a carving of a mythological or heraldic beast. Several stonemasons' marks can be seen in the passage, carved on the stonework framing the entrance to the Spirit in the Stones room. As each stone was completed, the mason would carve his unique mark, which he would already have registered with the master mason. This room is a representation of how Dunfermline Abbey might have looked before the Reformation. Stonework would have been plastered and brightly coloured, and the floor covered with tiles set out in elaborate patterns. Blind arcades are painted here in the 12th century style, with actual moulds taken from the nave of the abbey. The three paintings in the recesses of the arcades are produced in the style of the 1250s and depict St Margaret holding her Gospel book on the right, representing one of her early miracles. The Holy Trinity, the Father, Son and Holy Ghost in the centre, to whom Dunfermline Abbey was dedicated, and St Andrew on the left. A portable reliquary would have been made to house the most important relic of a saint, in this case a head shrine containing Margaret's skull. The whereabouts of the original are unknown, however sufficient documentation existed to allow this beautiful representation to be created by Walter Olson. The head shrine was a talisman which, together with her nightdress, was called for by Scottish queens when in childbirth to ensure the safe delivery of the all-important son and heir. This room is decorated and furnished as the private study of Lady Anne Hackett. It lies out with the original front wall of Abbot House, and experts consider it to have been built around 1660. The lady herself was born in London in 1623, the daughter of Thomas Murray, Provost of Eton College and tutor to Charles I. She was introduced to the recently widowed Sir James Hackett of Pitfern in Edinburgh, whom she later married to become Lady Anne Hackett. On the death of her husband, being forced to leave the Pitfern estate by her stepson, she was offered Abbot House by the Seaton family, as it was vacant at that time. She ran a residential school for the sons of Jacobite supporters. She also provided a soup kitchen and conducted a herb clinic for the poor of Dunfermline. Important visitors to Dunfermline Abbey would have been received by the abbot in his presence chamber. Indeed, much of the business of the abbey would have been carried out here. In the north wall you can see a quarterfoil tracered window, perhaps the most exciting find during the restoration of Abbot House. Prior to its discovery, historians believed the house to have been built after the Reformation, but experts have dated both the window and the north wall as 1450 to 1460. Robert Henryson, a notary public, lawyer, and schoolmaster is featured writing at his desk. He is best remembered as Scotland's greatest medieval poet. He lived and worked in Dunfermline in the 15th century and wrote many works. His two best known are represented here in mural form: The Testament of Cressid and Morale Fabilis. During an earlier conservation in the 60s, a portion of a mural dating back to 1571 was discovered above the west fireplace. It depicts a painting of Greek gods, possibly based on Greek mythology. The striking ceiling in this room is styled on one that existed in a 16th century house, now demolished, in Linlithgow. The heraldic shields represent the various influential families linked with Abbot House. This chamber is decorated and furnished in the style of the latter part of the 17th century. As aristocrats and traders travelled overseas, they became increasingly aware of styles and trappings of an affluent society which they aspired to emulate in their Scottish homes. Marble was both costly and difficult to obtain, and so it became fashionable to create the desired effect with an intricate paint technique as seen here. The tall display case contains a replica of King Robert the Bruce's sword. The Earl of Elgin and Kincardine, a direct descendant of Bruce, owns the original from which the replica was fashioned. The Pitfirn goblet, a replica made by Caithness Glass, was a treasured possession of James VI, and it was gifted to Sir Robert Hackett by the King on the eve of his departure for London in 1603. He was told that not only did the goblet have magic powers of changing colour, but the coloured threads would vibrate should poison be added to its contents. Witchcraft in Fife is also featured in this room, with some gruesome artefacts to illustrate the severity with which nagging wives and gossips were treated in Scotland's colourful past. A stunning sculpture of James VI with supporting information completes the scene, created by local artist Mary Johnson. During the restoration of the house, a recess was found which archaeologists believed could have been the abbot's guard-robe or privy. Investigation of the external wall revealed the location of the chute down which the waste material would have fallen into the street below. This room reflects a typical living space of the late 18th century. Here a family would cook, eat, sleep, work and play. Box beds, such as the one on display here, existed in Dunfermline until the middle of the 20th century. The length of the bed forced its occupants to sleep in a semi-upright position, aiding any respiratory disorders, whilst enabling the family to escape more quickly in the event of fire. The late 18th century was the time of the French Revolution. The British government was afraid that the active Scottish and English reform movements would resort to violence. The Friends of the People was one such organisation, and William Skirving, the General Secretary of the Friends, and George Mealmaker, the courier who delivered the correspondence and seditious writings of the group, are seen here at the table. Due largely to the paranoia in government circles, the pair were arrested, tried, and subsequently transported to the penal colonies at Botany Bay, Australia, in 1793. This staircase is thought to have been rescued from the building known as the Queen's House, built by James VI in the Abbey complex for his Queen, Anne of Denmark. The Annunciation stone above the staircase is a copy of a carved stone found in the ceiling of a dormer window in the royal palace, and the room was thought to have been part of the apartments of the last Abbot of Dunfermline, George Dury. This room was used as the headquarters of the 1145 Squadron of the Air Training Corps in 1941. There is an accurate representation of the constellation Orion for star recognition and navigation purposes painted in mural form. Elsewhere, murals depict landscape and accurate silhouettes of both friendly and enemy aircraft to train air cadets in aircraft recognition. Display cabinets contain World War II memorabilia and artefacts from both the battlefield and the home front. This room is dedicated to the lost industries of the Dunfermline area. The coal industry, which once had over 40 pits in Fife, is remembered with mining memorabilia and artefacts. The Victorian coal bunker was a regular feature in homes on upper floors of tenement buildings, saving residents the arduous task of carrying bucketfuls of coal up many flights of stairs. Once the Dunfermline linen mills wove tableware for shipping lines, hotel chains, palaces and embassies throughout the world. The Winterthur silk mill supplied the material for the wedding and coronation gowns of Queen Elizabeth II. Sadly, there are no working mills left in the area. The time clock was an essential part of industrial life, as employees were required to clock in and clock out to record their working day. Failure to do so would result in no pay. Another industry lost to the area was the production of the Lochgelly. These straps or belts were made by generations of the Dick family of Lochgelly, who were saddlers and coach builders. It was administered by teaching staff to the hand of offending pupils as a punishment, and was finally banned in 1984 following an action raised in the European Court of Human Justice. Many outstanding events from AD 800 to the present are beautifully recorded by way of the ceiling decoration featuring an historic thistle tree. Oak panelling around the room was rescued from Dunfermline Abbey after Historic Scotland deemed it a fire hazard and had it removed following the disastrous fire at Windsor Castle. Andrew Carnegie is casually seated on a park bench. Born in Dunfermline in 1835, he was the son of a hand-loom weaver. His family emigrated to America, where he pursued success in the iron and steel industry. His philosophy throughout life was to die rich is to die disgraced, and when he sold his business interests, making him the richest man in the world, he committed the rest of his life to philanthropic works. Anne Munro from Kingseat Hill was the Scottish organiser of the Women's Freedom League, a branch of the suffragette movement. Sir Joseph Noel Paton was born and raised in Dunfermline. He studied art at the Royal Academy in London and acquired a reputation as a painter of religious and spiritual subjects. He is shown working on the preliminary sketch for his painting of Malcolm and Margaret, which is owned by Carnegie Dunfermline Trust and hangs on permanent display in the city chambers. The Art Deco style of the 1920s to the 1940s is colourfully replicated here, evoking an era when visits to the theatre, dance hall or cinema were the most popular forms of entertainment. The history of Dunfermline Opera House and the rescue of its intricate plasterwork and subsequent shipping to Sarasota, Florida is told in words and pictures. Sheet music and theatre programmes are reminders of an age before television became commonplace in every sitting room in the country. The bust of Jeanie Carson and the photograph of her visit to Dunfermline illustrate the early days of commercial television in Scotland, when a programme called Hey Jeanie was screened. This room has been furnished partly as a 1960s living room and partly as a cafe of the same period. Many of the pieces of furniture and most of the artefacts were donated by local residents. The fragment of Beatles wallpaper was found in the East Wing during the 1990 restoration. The model ship is a scale model of the Queen Margaret, one of the 4 paddle ferries which until 1964 plied regularly across the River Forth, linking North and South Queensferry. The opening of the Forth Road Bridge signalled an end of the ferry service, a service started by Queen Margaret in the 11th century to provide transport for pilgrims as they made their way to St Andrews.